Welcome back to the channel Red Dirt Designs. You asked for a cloud tutorial, so on today's episode, we're going to be airbrushing clouds. We're going to paint this project on illustration board. I'm going to start by framing out the project with 2-inch tape to give it a border when we're finished. I'm going to be using water-based paint for this project by Wicked Colors. This is Wicked Blue 0007. I'm going to reduce about 10 to 1 with 0100 Wicked Reducer. I'm going to start by holding my airbrush a little closer to the illustration board. As I go further down the project, I'm lifting the airbrush higher so that way it does a dusting of paint to make it look lighter at the bottom as it gets closer to the horizon. For the next step, I'm going to be using Wicked Opaque White 0030, and I'm going to also reduce this 10 to 1 with the reducer. To make these clouds, I'm going to be using a cloud stencil that I cut out with my stencil burner. I did a tutorial on making these stencils with the stencil burner. I'll leave a link to that in the end screen. And here's my reference photo. I always got to have one of those to make sure I'm painting it correctly. My camera messed up on this part, but all I did was paint around the stencil, which leaves me a reference for my clouds. Now I'm just going to go in and paint in the details that I see in my image on my reference. I'm also going to soften some of the edges, and I'll jump back and forth from freehand to stencil. The stencil is just to give me a reference. I don't want to rely on my stencil too much, otherwise I lose the realism. Since the video messed up on that first part, here's how you do another cloud. I'm going to do one right here in the top center, just so you can see how one's done from the very start. The stencil just gives me a really good reference to build my cloud from. Once I've used the stencil, now I'm just going to give it a quick outline. Freehand, go inside and do a light glow and give some textures to the clouds on the inside part. I'm also going to make it look like the wind's blowing part of the cloud away. This happens randomly on clouds, and I think it's a cool effect. We're just continuously building layers with our stencil and freehand. This is all optional, do it the way you want, but try to make it look like your reference. It's a lot easier to paint what you see, not what you think you know, otherwise it won't look very realistic. Now we're going to pour the extra paint, the white paint, back into this Dixie cup here. And then I'm going to mix a little bit of the opaque black, 5211. We're just going to give this a light gray, so I gave it like 3 drips. We're also going to reduce it down just a little bit. We want to make sure we keep that same consistency. It's almost a white, it's such a light gray, because we don't want to get overboard with this step. Otherwise they'll look like rain clouds instead of white fluffy clouds. Because all we're wanting to do here is catch the very bottom of the clouds, because in the reference it gets darker on the bottom of the cloud, so I want to make sure I emulate that. And there's some shadows in some spots, so we're just catching all that right now. We'll still go over and we'll kind of crisp everything back up and then soften back and forth, back and forth. We layer constantly to get our textures right to where it looks like the image. Alright, once I'm finished with the gray, I'm going back in here with some white, and I'm going to make sure I bring back some of the details in the edges. We're about finished with this project. If this tutorial helped you at all, please hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and hit the like button. Thank you. Watch as we peel back the 2-inch tape. It leaves a nice little border around our illustration board. Looks pretty good, but to soften up the clouds, I'm just going to run a little bit more white over everything and give it a nice little glow to the cloud so it looks more like the reference pictures. And then we'll be finished with this project. Here's our finished cloud project. Hope you guys learned something from this tutorial. Hope it helps you out. I'll be posting a lot more airbrush tutorials in the future, so please hit that subscribe button. Thanks.